Ladies and gentlemen, it's again me, Benedict, and in this presentation I will show you the results of a case study that we carried out with my colleagues. We will present to you real operational results of practical measurements of fuel consumption of 3 different vehicles: passenger train, bus and passenger car. Indicators such as energy consumption and greenhouse gas production were monitored, taking into account the well-to-wheel principle. Fuel consumption of the vehicles was calculated on the Žilina-Rajec route in Slovakia, comparing rail passenger, bus passenger and passenger traveling individually by car. The route between Žilina and Rajec is non-electrified. Nowadays, the route is served by regional trains or independent traction in 1 to 2 hour cycles. The railway track as well as the road run along the river Rajčanka. The length of the track is 21.3 kilometers. Maximum gradient of the track caused by difference in elevation of Žilina and Rajec is 13 promile, and there is one short part of the track right after the Žilina station with the gradient of 17 promile. The average climb between terminals is 5 promile. There are 12 railway stops and stations on the line. Žilina is the first and Rajec is the last one. The maximum track speed is 60 km an hour, but the speed is limited to only 50 or 40 km an hour on some sections. Travel time between terminals is approximately 37 minutes. The average number of passengers carried by one train reached 32 people in 2014. This image shows the longitudinal road profile. As both the railway track and the road are situated along the river Rajčanka, both profiles are very similar. We have used the 813913 series engine unit for the measurement. The unit was manufactured in Zvolen in Slovakia by the conversion of the old 810 series wagons. Karosa C954 bus was manufactured by Karosa Vysoké Mýto in the Czech Republic. This table summarizes the basic technical and operational characteristics of the train unit and the bus that are used for regional passenger transport on this line. The simulation software Railway Dynamics was used to calculate the energy consumption of the train. Energy consumption of the train was calculated by the use of predefined parameters of the train and the route. The software works with imported data such as track direction, altitude, engine unit series, weight of the train, length of the train, axle load, number and location of stops. It calculates the energy consumption in kilowatt hours. This software can be used to calculate the energy consumption and travel time of any train on any given railway line. The calculation in this case study was made for driving in both directions. Consumption results for both directions are included in the final evaluation. The calculation shows the advantage of bus transport. Even though we used parametrically similar train and bus engines, the railway vehicles achieves higher fuel consumption on the monitor line than the bus. This is caused mainly by 28 tons greater own weight of the railway vehicle compared to the bus. The simulation fuel consumption of the motor train was compared with the real consumption of this unit on the line in question. The result of the simulation was confirmed, as the difference between simulation and the real consumption was only minus 8.5%. Therefore, all results were adjusted by 8.5% to be more realistic. Although the motor train achieves higher values of the actual number of passengers, it doesn't achieve higher efficiency than the bus. As indicated earlier, this is due to the higher dead weight of the train. Calculation showed that the energy consumption of the bus represents only 54 to 66% of energy consumption of the train. When calculating energy consumption on a per passenger basis, the difference between train and bus is significantly lower. Energy consumption of the bus represents 75 to 92% energy consumption of the train. It is caused mainly by the higher capacity of the train. Efficiency of bus transport remains higher in terms of energy consumption, but with fully occupied train, efficiency of rail transport would be closer to road transport efficiency. Similarly to energy consumption, it is also possible to calculate greenhouse gas emissions. The ratio between greenhouse gas emissions produced by different vehicles is similar to energy consumption of different vehicles, as it was calculated according to EN 16258 2012. The norm says that greenhouse gas production is the product of fuel consumption and emission factor. The next part of this presentation compares the fuel consumption of the passenger train with the fuel consumption of the passenger car Škoda Fabia. This table depicts technical parameters of the car. The results of the passenger car measurements showed the large discrepancy between the manufacturer's declared fuel consumption and the measured fuel consumption. The measured fuel consumption is usually 8 to 11.5% higher when compared to declared fuel consumption of the car. In absolute terms, fuel consumption of the car ranged from 4.33 to 4.56 liters per 100 kilometers on the monitored route. Small deviations between individual measurements were caused by different style of driving. The measurements were performed in the early morning hours when there was less traffic. The average section speed of the car was constantly monitored and adjusted, and the car's cruise control was engaged as much as possible. By this procedure, the minimum deviation of the results of individual measurements was achieved. Recorded differences are caused by different load of the vehicle. This figure depicts the energy consumption of individual means of transport per 100 kilometers for selected numbers of passengers transported. The worst case in terms of energy efficiency is individual car transportation. Efficiency dramatically increases with an increased number of people on board the car. However, fuel consumption increases too as a direct consequence of the increase of instantaneous weight of the car, but number of vehicles required for individual car transportation decreases. Let's have a look on this picture. The intersections of the curves represent the number of passengers for which it's more efficient to use the appropriate mode of transport. Compared to individual car transportation, trains become more efficient if the number of people to be transported individually by car is higher than 14. Considering our route from Žilina to Rajec, this means that 13 individual journeys by car are more efficient than 13 people traveling by train. Taking into account full occupancy of the car, 5 people on board, the train becomes more efficient with 73 people on board, which represents 90% train occupancy. The rate of greenhouse gas emissions produced by the train and the passenger car is directly related to the consumption of energy, for instance fuel. This is very well illustrated on the following picture. The amounts of greenhouse gases produced by individual means of transportation were calculated by the use of industry standard. This standard considers greenhouse gas production coefficients constant to the volume of fuel consumed or the amount of energy consumed in the fuel, in this case petrol or diesel. Thus, the amount of greenhouse gases produced is proportional to the amount of fuel burned. Emission factor of the diesel engine is lower compared to petrol engine. However, this fact doesn't affect the change in the results of the relative volume of greenhouse gas emissions produced by vehicles and the energy consumed. In terms of greenhouse gas production, the train remains more efficient when it is occupied by more than 14 people compared to individual car transportation. When the train is compared to cars with 3 or 5 people on board, the train becomes more efficient when it is occupied by 44 and 73 people, respectively. The results of these practical measurements were not intended to determine which mode of transport is better or more environmentally friendly. They were to stress the fact that the energy efficiency and greenhouse gas production not only depend on fuel and energy consumption, but also on load factor of individual means of transportation. Therefore, it's important to ensure the highest possible load factor of individual means of transport. Different types of vehicles can be appropriate for different traffic flows. The efficiency of ecological transport decreases with the decreasing load factor of individual means of transport. Therefore, one should make sure that the vehicles used match the traffic demand and maximum load factor is achieved with a view to reach environmentally friendly public passenger transport.